Have you ever heard of a moment in history so impossible that it sounds like a movie scene, yet it was real, raw, and written in blood and fire? This is the story of how one woman, outnumbered 50 to 1 at a besieged airport, climbed into her Apache helicopter and unleashed a strike so legendary it saved 300 Marines from certain death. And before I take you through every moment of this battle that became the stuff of military legend, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because the stories we bring you aren't just tales, they're the kind you'll never forget. It was 2004 at a dusty, war-torn airfield in the Middle East. The Marines stationed there were exhausted, low on supplies, and surrounded. Intelligence had warned of an insurgent attack, but no one expected the sheer scale of the ambush. At dawn, like a tidal wave, over 1,500 armed fighters stormed the perimeter. Mortar rounds screamed overhead, small arms fire rattled through the air, and suddenly the Marines found themselves hopelessly outnumbered. 50 to 1, the airport was chaos. Marines scrambled for cover behind sandbags, returning fire desperately. The control tower was hit first, antennas snapping, radios hissing static. The runway, their only lifeline for reinforcements, was already cratered by shells. The enemy closed in like a swarm. For the 300 Marines dug into that airport, the end felt inevitable. But on the horizon, there was one Apache helicopter. And inside it, there was Captain Rachel Valkyrie Hayes. Rachel wasn't the kind of soldier you forgot. At 29, she was one of the first women ever to command an Apache longbow combat helicopter in active war zones. Her call sign, Valkyrie, wasn't given, it was earned. Her fellow pilots said she had a sixth sense in the air, an instinct for battle no textbook could teach. And on that day, fate put her exactly where she was needed most. When the emergency call crackled over her headset, Marines pinned at the airport request immediate air support. She knew she was their only chance. Her Apache was armed with 30mm chain guns, Hellfire missiles, and Hydra rockets, but she was just one pilot with one bird against what felt like an army. The math didn't make sense. 50 to 1. But Rachel didn't hesitate. She only said 2 words into her comms. I'm inbound. As her rotors cut across the burning sky, Rachel's eyes locked on the scene below. The airport looked like hell. Smoke plumed from burning vehicles, tracer rounds stitched the air, and Marines were clustered in desperate defensive positions, firing until their barrels overheated. Insurgents poured in through breaches in the fence line, wave after wave, Valkyrie to ground. Hold your line, she said. I'm coming in hot. She swooped low, barely above the rooftops, the Apache's engines screaming like a beast unleashed. Her first Hellfire missile streaked down, detonating in the middle of an insurgent technical vehicle loaded with explosives. The fireball lit up the battlefield, scattering fighters in terror. Cheers erupted from the Marines below. For the first time in hours, hope flickered. But Rachel knew this wasn't just about dropping ordnance. It was about precision. For every enemy she destroyed, there were civilians nearby. For every target she hit, she risked incoming RPGs that could take her down in seconds. Her Apache dived, the chain gun spitting fire, ripping through insurgent trucks and gun positions. She weaved between incoming RPG trails, flares bursting as she dodged. The ground force commander's voice crackled in her ear. Valkyrie, you just bought us breathing room. But the enemy adapted quickly. Spotters on rooftops tracked her movements, shouting coordinates. RPG teams set ambushes, waiting for her passes. The Marines were still cornered, running low on ammo. And Rachel knew she couldn't stay in the air forever. Her fuel gauge was dropping to 8T that moment. She made a choice that no manual could prepare her for. She dropped altitude to rooftop level, flying so low that enemy fighters were almost within reach of her skids. She wasn't just attacking from above. She was hunting them through the streets point one by one. She neutralized RPG teams before they could fire. She targeted command trucks, coordinating the assault, crippling the insurgents' ability to organize. At one point, her Apache took small arms fire straight through the cockpit glass. Shards flew across her helmet, but she didn't flinch. She only pressed harder, her chain guns sweeping enemy positions with mechanical fury. The Marines on the ground described it later as watching an angel made of fire. After nearly an hour of nonstop combat, the enemy broke. The tide that had seemed unstoppable now faltered. Fighters abandoned their weapons, retreating into the desert. The survivors who remained were silenced under the Apaches' relentless fire. By the time Rachel pulled up for her final sweep, the battlefield had changed completely. Where there had been certain death for 300 Marines, there was now survival. The airport still burned, but the perimeter held. The Marines were bloodied, exhausted, but alive. When Rachel finally landed, her Apaches paint-scorched, her ammo nearly dry. Marines swarmed her with cheers and salutes. Some hugged her, others wept openly. The ground commander, his voice hoarse from shouting all night, simply said, "You didn't just save us. You saved history." News of her actions spread quickly, though Rachel herself refused the spotlight. She was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, one of the highest honors in U.S. aviation. But when reporters asked her how she did it, she only said, "They were outnumbered. I wasn't about to let them die." The Marines who lived that night still tell the story whenever they gather. They say they can still hear the roar of her Apache when they close their eyes, still see the fiery arc of her missiles lighting up the night. They call her their guardian Valkyrie, the warrior who descended from the sky when hope was gone. Years later, cadets at flight school studied her maneuvers that day, not from manuals, but from recorded gun camera footage that became mandatory viewing for Apache trainees. Her single-handed stand became a case study in courage under impossible odds. But for Rachel, it was never about glory. To her, the legend wasn't about being outnumbered 50 to 1. It was about the 300 Marines who lived to go home to their families. That, she always said, was worth every risk, and that's the story, friends. Outnumbered 50 to 1. One woman in an Apache turned the tide of battle and saved hundreds of lives. If this story gave you chills, if it reminded you of the incredible sacrifices made by those who fight not for medals, but for each other, then hit that subscribe button right now. Because here, we bring you stories that honor real courage, the kind the world should never forget.